Chekhov's atom bomb, Chekhov's eggs, and Chekhov's radio signal. All the Chekhovs came to play in this finale. Welcome to Pluribus for the rest of us. Tonight, we are talking about the season 1 finale of Pluribus. That's episode 9, titled La Chica o el Mundo, which translates for you English speakers to The Girl or the World. This is our instant take. We just watched the episode. These are our raw, somewhat immediate reactions. I say somewhat because we were talking for about 6 minutes until I realized we're not live. So you're seeing the rehearsed version of the opening. I'm Gil, by the way, here with my brother Daniel. Say hello.
Hey, what's up?
And you were so eloquent in everything you just said. Do you want to take a crack at saying it again?
Yeah. So, okay, this episode was awesome. In general, I feel this show has done such a good job of putting us in the seat of whichever character or the shoes of whichever character they want us to be in, right? To the point that, of course, we've all been anti-plurb. You know, we want Carol and Manusos to save the world. And yet this meeting between Manusos and Carol, like they got to meet me to a point where I was dreading it, right? They opened this episode with us seeing from like a surveillance plane footage of Manusos' ambulance driving towards Carol. And I'm pro Manusos. I'm on Manusos' side, right? More so than Carol at this point. And I'm dreading his arrival, right? Like I feel what Carol feels, or even what the plurbs feel, right? Of it's ominous of Manusos on the way, and he's aggressive, and he's got the machete, right? Like they just, man, this show is awesome.
And they hinted at this last episode. I said to Adam, I think, when the episode opens with Manusos grabbing a scalpel and holding one of the doctors hostage so they'll let him out of the hospital. You compare that to Carol hanging out with Zosha on several dates, essentially, and starting to live with her. Manusos starts to look a little insane from Carol's perspective. At least you anticipate that. And then this episode fully delivered on the difference between them. And what I found so funny, she calls him out. She's like, "You're driving around in an ambulance?" What short-term memory? 30 days ago, she was driving around in a police car, and Kumba had the exact same reaction to her. So this, to me, is once again a testament to the show's pacing. To take the Carol we knew at the beginning of the season and turn her into this, where you can do an episode where it's Carol. Would you rather save the world or hang out with Zosha? If you told me that 7 episodes ago, I would have said, and I might have even said on the podcast, that's insane. But they were able to get us there because the show took its time to make that believable. And I think it did a really good job of putting us in both characters' perspectives simultaneously. Because on the one hand, I'm on Manusos' side, especially after watching him almost kill himself to get here. I want to save the world. And he learned about that radio frequency. I want to keep learning about that. So it's frustrating when Carol doesn't respond to him positively. At the same time, he's being extremely aggressive, and he's snapping at her, which I learned the hard way. You do not do. As a child, I did that to my English teacher. She was very upset with me. I was young and stupid. Before the age of 25, your brain isn't even fully formed, so you can't blame me. Manusos never learned that lesson. I don't know how things are done in Paraguay. The point is, I understood both characters' perspectives. Which means for the first time all season, I was slightly able to understand the disliking Carol perspective that a lot of the audience had, though only temporary. And like I said, a testament to the show's pacing, it got me to a point where I could sympathize with her. I could see why she would make this choice, or why it would be a difficult choice, Zosha or the world. So we all thought that the meeting between Carol and Manusos was going to be very messy, and it was. What changed her mind, Daniel, when she decided to go off with Zosha? What got her to come back and tell Manusos, "My name is Carol Sturka. I wish to save the world"?
Well, Chekhov's eggs. It's what we thought that they have. They have her eggs, and they can turn them into stem cells, into induced pluripotent stem cells, which I have brought up multiple times on this show. But I will say I'm surprised because her egg cells only have half of her DNA. It would be easier I think, to create pluripotent stem cells out of one of her regular cells. Or, I don't know, maybe they're taking her DNA from a regular cell, putting in the egg cell, whatever. Anyway, I sort of called it, despite the fact that I'm explaining it pretty poorly right now. But Chekhov's eggs. Chekhov's eggs.
Yeah, actually, in the pre-show, right before the episode, I was talking about how at this point, Carol has been robbed of the self interested reason to save the world. Once she's told, we can't turn you into one of us, it's purely dependent on a degree of selflessness. Save the rest of the world. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. And that seems to be the nail in the coffin that turns her back to Manussos when she finds out they can turn me. I had a little smile on my face when they said it'll take a month, maybe 2 or 3. And in my head, I'm like, okay, how many seasons is that? Well, Vince Gilligan has said roughly 4 seasons. So if it's going to take 3 months to change her on the upper end, about a month a season, yeah, okay, I could see that. I found that pretty funny. What was interesting, though, is that that's the final nail in the coffin, but there were cracks before that.
There was the other moment, I mean, even right before the stem cell thing comes up, right, where she asks Zosha, like the actual Zosha, did she have somebody in her past? And I do think there's, and also actually the way this episode opened, right, was with that one woman, old schooler, getting converted, right, to join the hive mind, Kusamayu. It very much, I mean, Manussos' perspective that their bodies are stolen, right? I mean, I think it very much feels that way, right? And I think I had a moment. It's funny. The show does such a good job, I think, of subtly getting you to feel what the characters are feeling. In that scene, I did have this feeling where Carol's with Zosha. Sometimes I look at her as Zosha, but in that scene, that last scene together, I thought of her as, that's not Zosha. Like, this is a stolen body. Like, Zosha was somebody. Like, she probably, might have been heterosexual, right? She had her own, like, person that she loved. And her body is just being used to, like, entertain Carol, right? Like, it's very disturbing. And I think in that scene, Carol was partly feeling that. It was like that sort of came up in some way.
The show does a great job of subtly cueing you to feel a certain way and subtly reminding you of different ways of looking at this. For example, I personally found myself mostly in Manussos' shoes for a good portion of this episode, and then that shifted at certain points. And I think part of that is because of the opening, when we see Kusamayu, which, by the way, interesting. I think this is not the first time. We've seen it a couple, this might be the second time, where we start at a later point in the count up and then jump back. Because we start at around the 70-day mark with Kusamayu joining them, and then we go back to the roughly 60-day mark. We did see that once before with Manussos. But in that flashback, there's so much that makes joining seem unsettling because you have this ritual that feels very human. A lot of people singing, setting her up to become one of them. The moment she's convulsing, they all stop. They don't need to sing, right? Because they're all joined mentally. And then that's punch 1. But the 1-2 punch is then she walks away from the goat and it's crying. And to me, there is nothing more heart-punching, heart-wrenching than an animal whining or producing some sound that says, I love you. I don't want you to leave. And when you hear that, that's very emotionally effective, maybe even emotionally manipulative to make you kind of hate the hive again. After last episode was all about getting us to love the hive, they had to remind us so that when we cut to Manussos, to some extent, we can be in his shoes and understand why he would be so frustrated with Carol here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like the 1-2 punch was so effective. Like this episode, I think more so than any other one, has left me feeling so uncomfortable with the hive, right? Is like, it is, yeah, they do all this like fake nice stuff, but like they are definitely just basically killing everybody. Like it's horrible. And yeah, the instant they go silent, like the whole ritual from the beginning, I'm thinking this is so fake. It's such nonsense, right? And they're almost pretending like it's part of like a local cultural ritual thing, so that she's comfortable with it. And it's just not. That's not what it is.
And I think if you ask them, I think they are the best. I feel like a lot of this show is about rationalizing. It's about the emotions that drive you and then how you rationalize that into your quote unquote logical behavior. The hive does it constantly. There's a contradiction here. We don't hurt anybody, but yeah, if we can steal your frozen eggs and then use them to produce a virus tailored to you, we're going to stick it inside you and convert you into one of us. That is obviously in contradiction with we don't harm anybody. So they're self-rationalizing by, well, Carol's drowning. She doesn't realize that she could be so much happier. So of course we're going to help her. But
So
it's not. Oh, go ahead.
no, go finish.
I was just going to say that theme of rationalizing, it's not just the hive, it's also the characters. I said this in the pre-show that while Carol is with Zosha, she's going to start to have those thoughts. Maybe the world doesn't need saving after all. As soon as she starts to feel better and better, her brain is going to give her all these reasons why she doesn't need to try and save the world. Chief among them, maybe it's going to be hard and possibly impossible. One person versus 7 billion, it can't be done. Similar on a smaller scale, Minusos not eating the food they keep delivering to his fence. When he gets to the point where he's starving and there's nothing available, his brain is going to start telling him, they probably didn't poison it, right? There's no way. Go have a bite. Why not? So I think that theme of what drives you, emotions versus the rational side, and how do you rationalize, I think that's a lot of what the show ended up being about, whether on purpose or not.
Yeah, and we talked in a previous episode a lot about the sort of slippery slope, right? Like the importance of Manusos's sort of hard principles here is like it happened with Carol. Carol opened up just a little bit, right? She let Zosha in, and it sent her down this whole spiral of complete emotional dependence on the hive, right? It's so easy, right? Like one rationalization leads to the next. And like, yeah, it's comforting to go on dates with Zosha. Like Carol is still only 60, 70 days out from the death of her wife and like the end of the world, right? She's like grieving and extremely vulnerable.
Yep. And I think in terms of going back to what we said earlier about cracks in the facade, I think there's another one when Carol is talking to Zosha and she goes, fun fact. Like that's the old Zosha from pre-tailoring her personality to say I and be the person that Carol wants her to be. And I lost my train of thought. I had something brilliant to say. Anything on your mind, Daniel, before I jump to this? Go ahead.
The nuclear bomb at the end. So the nuclear bomb, right, is, of course, in part, it's a declaration of war. Right. And like on multiple levels, it's a nuclear bomb. Right. So that's sort of like a declaration of war against the hive. It's also kind of a F you to the hive of, look, you guys said you would give me whatever I want. I said I wanted a nuclear bomb originally. I'm going to take my nuclear bomb and then I'm going to figure out how to take you guys down. But beyond that, do you think it serves any real purpose in their plan?
Here's what I think. It made me think of the example we've brought up so many times. Whenever Vince Gilligan talks about how sometimes we'll do something in the writer's room, we'll put it in the show, and we don't know where it's going. Breaking Bad, the season that opened with Walt opening his trunk and you see that big machine gun, they're like, we put in that scene, and we didn't know what he was going to use it for. We came up with an answer later. I think this is here primarily as, like everything you just said, a declaration of war. There was a journalist who had seen the episode in advance and tweeted that when the episode finished, they were laughing. They didn't tell us why they were laughing, and now we get it. And in the pre-show, I said, I think it has to be a callback of some kind. It connects back to something earlier, and that's exactly what it was. And to be fair, it's a pretty vague prediction. It was hilarious. And I think, but will it actually come to any use? I think probably not. But I think maybe. I think in the writer's room, they're talking about that right now. Because it could go either way. It'd be fine if it doesn't, and it was just kind of an FU. But it's Chekhov's atomic bomb. It's there if the writers decide we need it for some reason.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the height of tension between Manusos and Carol. That's not the height of tension, but one high point of tension at the beginning when Manuso says we have to destroy them. They're better off if we can't change them back. They're better off dead or something like that.
Shogun Orta, actually, thank you for the $5 super chat. He says something directly relevant to that. I didn't like that they had Manny say they should kill them all. If he's looking at this from a religious angle, I think a real Christian wouldn't do that. To be fair, he didn't say, let's kill them all. It was more, I'm willing to do that if necessary. And somebody else in the chat pointed out he did try to save Rick. He tried calling for him to come back. So he's definitely taking a harder stance than Carol, but I don't think he's saying, let's just go slaughter them all.
That's right. And he does bad persuasion on his point, right? To like bring that up with Carol right away. And it just shows the big rift between them. But yeah, then Manusos, after experimenting on Rick, concludes, I actually think there is a way to reach them. I think we can bring them back. And that's all of, and then he dives into his, electricity and magnetism and electrical engineering research, all in English, by the way. And he has to translate it. Incredible.
The most badass thing he's done yet. Yes, even more badass than going through the gap and doing that self-surgery of cauterizing his wounds. But him sitting down and trying to learn an entire field of science while translating basically word by word with a Spanish to English dictionary, it made me want to stop watching and just do something really productive. And then I reminded myself that given my line of work, watching this is productive. I'm just like Manusos. So awesome. I mean, what did we learn about electromagnetism and the radio from Manusos's experiment?
What did we learn? So something in that radio frequency changed when he sort of paralyzed them, right? But I need to rewatch. What did you observe what changed?
My feeling is that we didn't really learn a whole lot. We kind of confirmed it was confirmation of what we all suspected by knocking out the hive, which I love the way he does it, just yelling at them. And he sees that it causes the radio signal to start warbling. So he confirms somehow that radio signal, that frequency is connected to them. And that's enough for him to say, I need to go learn about radio signals and electromagnetism. I don't know that we learned anything more than that, really. I really loved when he asked them to send another one to his house. And I was like, okay, finally, someone's going to sit down and just start asking them questions. But I think we get a pretty good argument this episode for why that wasn't necessarily the best idea from the beginning. Because one of the criticisms I saw early on is if I was Carol, I'd sit down and just ask them a bunch of questions, learn about them. And I think it's easy to forget what it would really feel like if suddenly aliens, it was invasion of the body snatchers, you're basically the only one left versus 7 billion people. You would be afraid to get close to them physically. And then there's the other thing Carol said is, I'm smart enough to know you don't ask a drug dealer about their heroin. And I think here she did ask them about their heroin and she had a taste and she starts to get hooked. That's what last episode was all about. But I think Manusos is so hard-headed, there's virtually no risk of this happening.
Well, and he steered the conversation, right? He asked, that's right. She comments, Zosha says that he was very thorough and pointed in his questioning. I mean, to the point that he figured out, he probably asked them, what ways can hurt you? How do I do it, right? Because he warned them before he did it, which means he understood sort of what it would involve. And he even probably thought through, I don't know that he even thought through, I think he does want to preserve their bodies,
yes.
Right? He cares about turning them back. So he's like, okay, I understand what's going to happen. I'm warning you guys, I'm about to do the thing that hurts you. So,
everyone lie down. Which is something I brought up in a previous episode when Zosha came back to Carol. I was like, I bet when they came back, the rest of the world was prepared just in case. Like, everybody sit down, everybody lie down. Now, one point I want to make in terms of analyzing what drives us, like that theme. If you look at Manusos versus Carol, why did she succumb and he didn't? I don't think it's as simple as he's really hard-headed and principled, so he's not going to fall for it. If you think about the difference between the two of them, Carol was hard-headed. She was focused on saving the world. As soon as that seemed hopeless, because as far as she got was, let me give one of you truth serum and ask, how do I reverse this? She couldn't get an answer. They all left. At that point, it kind of feels like any move I make risks all of them disappearing, and then I'm at another brick wall. So she lost hope. And even then, she didn't give up. She held out for 40 days. But imagine 40 days of isolation that you don't know is only going to be 40 days. For all you know, it's the rest of your life. And you're going to die knowing that you failed to save Earth and all of humanity is gone. That is enough to break, I think, anybody down. Manusos, on his end, well, he was alone for plenty of time, wasn't he? Yes, but he always had a sense of purpose. He was going through all the radio signals, looking for anything. As soon as he reached the last one, okay, hope is gone. I have almost nothing except for that one weird sound I heard on that one frequency. But the moment he got to the end, he got Carol's tape. Boom, There's new hope for him. And now he goes on a journey. And it's a very difficult journey. But like Carol, when she was struggling as a writer and felt very happy and fulfilled, he is now struggling to get somewhere, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. At no point has Minusos lived with utter hopelessness the way Carol did. And I think that's a really important point for the season.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Which I think gets to why the show might be as polarizing as it is. Because if you look at the overall arc of the season, and you look at it in terms of humans versus aliens, what happened? Well, they figured out that there's a certain frequency that has something to do with them. That's basically it. And they learned a couple things about how the hive functions. There was very little movement. If you're watching this show purely to know how are we doing in terms of versus the hive, you're going to walk away bored to tears and disappointed. But if you're also engaging with it and enjoying it on the character level, where it's dealing with a reluctant hero, one of the most reluctant of all time, what makes them reluctant? What gets them to feel reinvigorated? How does that differ from one person to another? I think we see more than any other episode, this finale, the season was about that question. It was less about trying to save the world and more about, do you want to save the world? Why or why not? To make this appropriate for an English essay or like an AP Lit question.
All right, Gil, I got to run to catch my train, but I'll let you continue the instant take.
Okay, Daniel, thank you for joining, and we'll see you on the full take.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. I'll see you later.
Okay, everybody in the chat, we can keep going as long as you want. Usually these instant takes go 20 to 30 minutes. So we can keep chatting a bit. And then, like I said, we'll be back for the full take where we go scene by scene. Frothy philosophy regarding the post-credit scene. Do you think the helicopter will crash or it's a fake out? Can somebody confirm? Was there a post-credit scene I missed? I will say one big critique for this episode is one I had for last episode, which is that on a monitor on my computer, it's not working to watch the show anymore. I had to break out my iPad, which is very frustrating. And Captain Ziggy, sorry I missed your super chat. Thank you for the $4.99. It's crazy to think that they never would have mentioned using her eggs this whole time had she not asked. Yes, I think this shows even stronger than we've seen before to what extent they are willing to lie by omission. They know very well that Carol would want to know this information, but they're not going to tell her unless she asks. And even if she asks, they're not necessarily going to answer. They're going to give the silent treatment as long as they can. And if you keep insisting, you'll get an answer. Kumba even says when he asked John Cena about what are they drinking, this milk, it was after some insistence and pressure that John Cena admitted, a lot of us, most of us will die out in the next 10 years, given our dwindling food supply. Frothy philosophy. I'm lying worse than the hive. So I think this is you trying a social experiment like we talked about in the last episode. If we try and spread some rumors, there's a special second episode. You went with post credits and you had me for a second. I appreciate it. Let me see if I had anything else in my notes that I wanted to talk about. Okay, self-preservation. That's back on the table. That's the final nail in the coffin that gets Carol to come back to Minusos and say, yes, let's try and save the world. So the first place my mind went is who else will be swayed by self-preservation? And Kumba is the first person I thought of. I feel like he is one who would not want to be converted. Now, there is a question of, okay, they got Carol's frozen eggs, and that's how they're able to develop the stem cells. So Kumba still seems to be safe. But as Daniel has brought up a few times, skin cells, other cells that are easily acquired without any kind of invasive procedure could also be done. But I imagine that would be a more lengthy process than if you had eggs, maybe. So Kumba might have a little bit more time. He could just hang out and wait for Carol and Minusos to save the world, and he'll be fine. Otherwise, honestly, I think we've gone through my big thoughts coming off the episode. For the full take, of course, I'm going to rewatch it. I'm going to listen to the Insider podcast. Usually, though, that's mostly behind the scenes fun facts. Vince Gilligan tries to keep his lips sealed more than he used to on the Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul podcast. So often I don't get a whole lot of stuff to bring to this podcast, but I'll listen just in case. Gil, did you get stood up on this stream? Yes, I did. Partially. Daniel at least showed up a little bit. And here, you all want to hear something that I shouldn't admit publicly? But Adam, who was feeling a little ill, and we were hoping he'd feel so sick that he could call out of work and join this stream, I was probably the one who got him sick. I have to admit that. Part of my master plan to try and get him onto the podcast, but it didn't work out. Smackus says, there are different kinds of stem cells. They mentioned pluripotent cells. So, okay, I'll have to ask Daniel or Adam. People have more medical expertise than me. What the difference is between stem cells derived from eggs versus other cells. See how safe or not safe is Kumba. Guy Incognito says, a little 23-minute Pluribus making of just got dropped on the Apple TV YouTube channel. Okay, well, that's what I'm going to watch right after this. Okay, well, unless anybody else has any other major reactions or fun stuff they want to share coming off the finale, I think we can wrap up here. So the usual housekeeping. This was our instant take. We're going to do our full take in a few days where we go scene by scene through the episode, full recap and analysis. It will be live streamed on the official One Take channel, and it will be archived for future viewing on the One Take podcast channel. And if you just want to listen to us without seeing our beautiful faces, find us in any podcast app by searching Pluribus for the rest of us. With that, I just have to say, this has been an awesome season. It's so great to have Vince Gilligan and everybody else, Allison Tatlock, Gordon Smith, etc., all the people who were involved in Better Call Saul that came back for this show, and all the new people who have joined. It's just so good to have a show this great on TV. The sad thing is, I imagine it's going to be a year or two before we get the next season, but that doesn't mean there's no content coming. Predictions video, theory videos, I'll do more between now and then, I'm sure, to at least salve the wound and help pass the time between now and then. So with that, everybody, thank you for watching. I'm Gil. I'm Daniel. I'm Adam. And this is Pluribus for the rest of us. Instant Take.